Achetez vos billets d'avion à l'agent de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel. Avec l'agent de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, pas de problème de connexion, pas de problème de transfert de vol. Avec l'agent de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, c'est le voyage en toute tranquillité, en toute beauté, de votre maison jusqu'à votre destination. Votre satisfaction est notre plaisir.
Bonjour ou bonsoir selon les endroits où vous nous captez en ce moment. Je voudrais vous dire tout simplement que vous êtes dans l'émission Afrique et Développement. Mais aujourd'hui, nous allons le faire en anglais parce que je reçois un anglophone. Mais ne vous inquiétez pas parce qu'à la fin de l'émission, nous allons donner le résumé de tout ce que nous aurons dit dans cette émission. So I want to welcome all of you who are watching this show called Africa and Development. Today I have a guest. My guest speaks not only speaks English. That's why this show will be done in English. And at the end, as I said it in French, we will summarize what we will have said in French so that French speakers can understand what we said in the show. My guest today is Professor Zalanga, Samuel Zalanga. You can see him on the screen. Professor Zalanga is a professor at Bethel University. He works in the Department of Political Science and he teaches sociology. So that is the person we will be talking with about our theme of today. And the theme is very interesting. Maybe you have thought about it or not, I don't know, but you will discover important things in this theme. The theme is about religion. Religion, a tool for development. Haha, I don't know, maybe it's amazing. Religion, a tool for development. So we will discover if it is or it is not with Professor Zalanga. Professor Zalanga, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very fine, and thank you very much for inviting me to come and participate in this program today.
Thank you. I am very honored to have you in this show. And I think we will talk a lot about religion, and I'm glad that you have been working on religions for a long time. So you will give us a good understanding of what religion can play as a role in development. It may be international development or it may be just development at home. So I have a first question to you, Professor. You studied already religion in relation with development.
Yes.
Can you tell us something that you have published already in this area of science?
Well, thank you very much for asking this question. I have actually published a lot of book chapters and articles in the area of religion and development, or religion and social change. I cannot go over the list just off my head because there are quite a lot of them, but let me just give you an idea, and to the listener, why this is really something very important to me. When I started teaching, I never took a course in graduate school about religion and development. But what was so interesting was when I did my doctoral studies, where I compared the role of ruling elites coalition in Malaysia and Nigeria. I was trying to see what role do the ruling classes or the people in power play in the formulation and development of development policy and its implementation. So I decided to go to Malaysia, and I was there for 6 months collecting data, interviewing quite a lot of people. And when I started the research, I never thought that religion is going to play an important role in explaining or understanding development. But by the time I started collecting the data and interviewing people in Malaysia, I found out that it is impossible for me to really write my doctoral dissertation and explain the role of ruling elites in development policy formulation and implementation in Malaysia and Nigeria without actually focusing on religion. So I ended up comparing Islam and development in Malaysia and Nigeria. And what was so interesting about that was that, of course, even though I am not a Muslim, but I grew up in northeastern Nigeria, and northern Nigeria, by and large, is predominantly Islamic. So in my village, for instance, there are only 4 families that are Christian. All the others are Muslim. So all my classmates, the majority of my classmates, the people I went to school with, are all Muslim. So the reason why I chose Malaysia for my doctoral dissertation is simply because I found out that Malaysia is an Islamic country, but it has made far more progress than many African countries, especially countries in Africa that have a large Muslim population. And given the fact that I am from northern Nigeria originally, I decided that it would be good for me to compare Malaysia and Nigeria so as to see what role Islam played there or compared to northern Nigeria. And that was how I became very interested in the role of religion. And I found out that definitely religion played an important role in the development of Malaysia in a positive way, while in Nigeria, I wouldn't say that it hasn't played some positive role, but on the whole, if you really look at it, religion has a major constitutes a major obstacle to development in Nigeria, I would say. Now, I can get into detail depending on which direction you want me to get in, but I think the most important thing is to understand, in general, how does religion contribute to development? And if you are interested, I can get into that.
Okay, maybe we will get there soon. What I understand is that the discovery that you did about religion in development, that's what pushed you to start studying religion and development. My question is like this. Did you find in Islam a concept which push people to do development, especially in Malaysia where you made your studies? If there is a concept that is at the core of that practice of development.
Okay, I think there's a point that I need to explain here, which is really very, very important. Most of the time when we talk about religion, we tend to think that religion is just existing in social vacuum. And what I mean by social vacuum means like existing in empty social space like that. But all religions that are practiced by human beings are embedded in a particular culture, in a particular group of people, and in a particular historical period and particular people. So what people make of religion is dependent on the people, the time, and the historical period, and how the people decide to use religion. One religion can be used in different ways depending on the people who are using it, and the place where they are located, and also the historical period. One of the things that I found really very fascinating about how Islam contributed to national development in Malaysia has to do with the role of Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, who was their prime minister. And what I thought was quite interesting about him was that he was trained in Singapore under the British, and he was somebody who has read a lot about the evolution of Western civilization, because if you read his books, you will see him citing the experiences of the ancient Greeks and things like that. So it was his vision of what religion should be that really contributed immensely to the transformation of Malaysia. And there were a lot of people who opposed him at that time. I think they felt like maybe he was trying to secularize Islam or something like that. But in the course of my interview, some people said that initially when he started, they resisted him, but gradually they found out that they ought to honor him and respect him because of his courage in trying to challenge them to re-examine their own society. Let me give you just one example.
Go ahead.
To show you the way he thinks, for instance. In Malaysia, there are Chinese, there are Indians, and then there are the Malays. The Malays are Muslims, but they are the majority in the country. But when I was there, when you look at development, you find out that the Malay people who are Muslims were more backward in terms of development. The Chinese were making far more progress, and then the Indians were somewhere in between. So in one of his books I was reading, he made this point, for instance, to challenge Muslims. He said, for instance, you say that you are Muslims, you believe the true God, but the Chinese, because they are Buddhists, they are not worshipping an Abrahamic God. So like Buddhism is not like a true religion or something like that. He said, but don't you feel ashamed that every day you are the people who go to the shop of the Chinese begging for money or begging for loan or begging for credit? Why is it that the God that you worship, who is the true God, doesn't change your situation so that you don't have to go and beg or something like that? So he is pushing them there very hard to really think, okay? Okay? So, and this is a question that I think even today we have to ask ourselves. For instance, I tell students that if religion is just, if you're looking for just people who are intelligent, people who are kind, people who are honest, frankly speaking, if you travel around the world, and I've done some travel around the world, you're going to find out that people of different religion, not just I'm a Christian, but I've encountered people who are not Christians, but they are very kind, okay? So in this case, I have also encountered people who are very honest, but they are not Christians. So my point is, you have to ask yourself fundamental questions. Even if I think my Christianity is making me honest, my Christianity is making me to be this and that, I have to also recognize that there are people around the world who worship other religions or who are part of another religion, but they also have that same things that I consider to be very idealistic. So I think Malaysia, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Mahathir Mohamad, was very, do I say, aggressive or very, very concerned about challenging the Malay people to re-examine how religion is going to be relevant in terms of how they transform their lives. Not just, for instance, going to the mosque and praying every day, but nothing changes in your life, and then the world is changing, because he was concerned that other countries are changing, Malaysia is backward, or Southeast Asian countries are backward. So he wanted Malaysia at that time under what he called Wawasan 2020, Vision 2020. He wanted Malaysia to be the first Muslim country that would be fully industrialized, okay? But in order for Malaysia as a Muslim country to do that, there is a need for Malay people or Malaysian people to change the way they are thinking, because we remember that even Jawaharlal Nehru, who is a Hindu in India, said that developing countries cannot industrialize without domesticating modern science and technology. Now, how do you domesticate modern science and technology, which is the foundation of Western civilization in many respects, if you continue to think in a very traditional way? So this is a challenge that we still have in Africa about, if we want to develop, we cannot call ourselves developed by going to China every day to import things or going to Europe to import things. We have to develop the capacity to develop these things. And so the question is, how does religion help us to think more critically so that we can be producing our own things, so that we don't just, for instance, import cars from Europe or the United States and then bring them to church, and then the pastor just goes and lays his hands on and bless the car. Okay, we can produce the car ourselves.
Okay, I have a question before we continue. Mm-hmm. You said that the Prime Minister of Malaysia was trained by the British in Singapore. Mm-hmm. And according to what I know, most of the British, they are not a Muslim. Mm-hmm. Did you see any Christian influence in that education in your studies?
Okay, in terms of what many people do not know, and I think in many African countries people are not aware about this, but during the medieval period, there were great Islamic scholars, and actually when you read the history of Western civilization, some people will tell you that, not some people, this is well documented, that some of the heritage that the Western civilization got from the ancient Greeks was actually saved by Muslim scholars during the medieval period, so that when Europe was in the Dark Ages, and then when Europe started going through the Renaissance and then the Enlightenment, then some of these things that were saved by Muslim scholars, they were having all this conversation in Arabic, now they were translated into English. For instance, I remember reading the Makadima by Ibn Khaldun. Mm-hmm. And when you read the Makadima by Ibn Khaldun, I was very surprised that he was quoting Plato, Siyasa Madaniya, which means Plato's utopian republic. Okay, mm-hmm. So, but many people in Africa do not understand that Islam has had a strong heritage of intellectual reflection and development, and Muslim scholars have asked many important questions that were later transitioned, that were later borrowed or were used by Western scholars. So in that respect, I want to say that Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad was aware of that because he was quoting all the ancient Greeks, but he understood what Islam did in the past, or Islamic scholars did in the past. So that's one way to answer your question. But the other way to answer your question is that, remember that even in Africa, the missionaries educated people, and sometimes the missionaries educated them with the intention of them becoming just kind of subservient or subalterns in the colonial system. In other words, they just become like servants. But the problem with education is that once somebody receives a very good education, you can't limit their thinking. In other words, once you teach somebody certain things, once the door opens, like Paulo Freire said in his book, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, they will see the world in a different way, and they will begin to ask questions that you never thought they would ask, because now you open their mind. And I think this is truly one of the situation in Malaysia, because the Prime Minister got educated, but irrespective of what the British intended in Singapore, in Malaysia, but his education led him to ask bigger questions.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I'm glad that you compared Islam in Malaysia and Islam in Nigeria, which is one of the African countries. So what can we say, what Islam in Nigeria is lacking to promote development as they did in Malaysia, for example?
Okay, this is really very interesting. You are getting into some very complex history here, because I do not know whether the listener really understands the history of Nigeria very well in order to appreciate what I'm going to say. But if the listener has been following the news, you notice that there's a lot of instability, especially in northern Nigeria, because of banditry, like kidnappings and all those kind of things. And many of these kidnappings are done by people who identify themselves as either Fulani or Muslims or whatever. There are quite a lot of things going on there.
Yeah.
Now, some people are really very surprised about what is really happening. But in my case, because of this, my doctoral dissertation was 800 pages. It was 2 volumes.
Wow.
The comparison of the two countries. Because I was, as somebody who grew up poor in Nigeria, I wanted to understand what would I learn that would make Africa and Nigeria in particular and my region to transform.
Yeah.
Because I don't have any kind of antagonism against any country or any nation, but just as other countries have developed, I also want Africa, I also want Nigeria, I want the poor people of Africa to see their living standards really improve. But one of the major differences between Islam in Malaysia and Nigeria, and even in Malaysia too, it was like that, but Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad would really shake the system really very well. But in Nigeria, we didn't get anybody who did that. And that is the fact that the Muslim leaders in northern Nigeria, who became very influential even in the post-colonial period, did not see any kind of need to transform the hierarchy or the institutional structure of the country. It is just assumed that there is this aristocratic hierarchy. Somebody is up here, somebody is in the middle, somebody is at the bottom or whatever, just like the medieval period.
Yeah.
We are in the modern period, but the mindset of most of the leaders is medieval because they just believe in keeping this hierarchy, the person at the top providing something to the person at the bottom, and then the person at the bottom coming to say, oh, thank you very much, or I worship the person who is very successful, okay? There is no vision that this somebody who is at the bottom should be empowered so that he too or she too can become something. There was only one leader in northern Nigeria who really came out and talked about this, and that's somebody called Aminu Kano, who was a person who created a political party, even though he was a Muslim, but just oriented to helping the poor. And he said, Nigeria will never be a country that people will be happy about unless it turns to be a country where somebody who is nobody can turn out to be somebody. Okay? So how can you make someone who is nobody to turn out to be somebody? The idea he's talking about here is social mobility. You open the society, you empower the people at the bottom so that they can move up. This is through education and giving them, changing the culture so that the culture can really empower them. These are exactly the things that Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad did in Malaysia. He understood that in order for Malaysia to develop, the country has to open up, and the ordinary peasant farmer in Malaysia has to be empowered. And to be frank with you, I visited some of these agricultural projects that were created in Malaysia to empower these peasants. I was very, very amazed and very, very impressed when I did my research. So, in short, the way the northern Nigerian elite behaved is similar to what Frantz Fanon said in his book, The Wretched of the Earth. He made an observation that the problem with the post-colonial African bourgeoisie is that he has no intellectual curiosity. No intellectual curiosity. He's just satisfied to be importing foreign products, and then when he imports these foreign products, he flaunts them around as a mark of distinction so that people will respect him, that look at this person, he bought this car from this country, from that country, or this and that. But he never sits down and have a sleepless night asking himself, how can we create a new product in this country? How can we also be very productive so that we can improve the situation of our own people, so that it is not that we always have to import from China or from Europe, but we can also have the capacity to produce these things ourselves. Okay?
Okay.
I think this is very important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your intervention is bringing a lot of questions,
Yeah.
which is good.
Yeah.
I was reading an article by Paul G. Hibert, and the article was titled "The Role of Religion in International Development." And in there they said that religion is the core of cultures. I'm asking your opinion on that. Do you agree with that or not?
Yes, I agree with that. Depending on how you define religion, this is not a classroom, so we're not going to get into the whole question of, oh, what is the definition of religion? But let me give you in brief 5 ways in which religion is really very, very important, because religion is like a worldview, right? Mm-hmm. When I say worldview is like a lens. Okay, in other words, what you see, you always see it through a lens. And religion is the lens through which people see the world. And let me give you 5 ways in which religion does that. 1, religion helps the human being to understand, to connect with the divine. And what I say with the divine, I mean, in Abrahamic religion, we say God, but in some other religions, it may not be God. But the idea of the divine is something beyond us. Mm-hmm. Okay, we are creatures, but that thing is not a creature. He is the creator. Okay? So the relationship, that having a relationship with that divine, help us to know who we are. In other words, for a lot of people in human history, even in the ancient Greeks, they have all these Greek gods or whatever. And if you see the way, many of the ways the Greek talk about themselves, it is always related to their gods. The same thing with the Romans, right? Yeah. So this is the one way that religion helps us. In other words, if I sit down here, how do I know who I am? First, I align myself to this divine, and that helps me to understand who I am. So the second way religion plays an important role is through intrapersonal understanding. Intrapersonal understanding simply means what is going on within us. Carl Jung, who is a psychologist, argued, for instance, that we have written quite a lot about the external world, about the environment, the solar system, and all sorts of things like that. But he said we still do not know very much about what is happening inside the human being. Okay? So inside us, there's still something really very complex. We human beings are very complex. There is a lot of things we process within ourselves, and all these things shape who we are as human beings. And religion helps us in processing who we are internally. There are a lot of people who have written autobiographies and things like that, which help them to understand, to explain how religion helps them to process internally who they are. I may not share it with you, but internally religion helps me to do that. Okay?
Yeah.
So, and then the third way religion helps us is through interpersonal relationship. So what is interpersonal relationship? How I relate to you. So for instance, if I meet with somebody who is a person from a different racial group, from a different nationality, a different gender, somebody who is probably disadvantaged or something like that, how do I relate to that person? Religion plays a very important role in shaping our understanding. For instance, for those that are familiar with the Christian tradition, there's a concept called Imago Dei, and Imago Dei simply means that all human beings are created in God's image, right? So what that simply means is that if I go out here and I meet somebody, even if we don't have the same religion, we don't have the same nationality, we don't have the same race, we don't have the same ethnicity, nationality, I still have to recognize him as somebody created in the image of God, and I owe him that recognition and respect, okay? So our religious views or beliefs can affect the way we engage in interpersonal relationship with other people. And then a fourth way religion can also shape us as human beings is through our corporate relationship. So corporate relationship is that if, for instance, I am a part of a community, I teach in a particular institution, I am a citizen of the United States, right? I am part of St. Paul, Minnesota. I am part of Ramsey County. So what is my role as part of that corporate community, okay? So if you are a part of a corporate community, are you supposed to be there and try to just dominate and try to make yourself to be the king? Or are you called to be a servant, okay, to be of service for the common good, okay, which is something that has been emphasized in the Catholic tradition, the idea that the common good is really very, very important. So this is the fourth way, into our corporate relationship, how we become part of a larger corporate relationship and how we should conduct our life there. And then finally, the environment. Religion tells us something about our relationship to the environment. And when I say the environment, I mean environment writ large. But let me focus at this level about the physical environment, because, you know, we cannot survive as human beings without the physical environment. Even when we're an industrialized society, we still need the soil, we still need our environment, and that's why there's a lot of discussion about climate change. So religion helps us to understand how we relate to the environment. We don't have much time here, but I'll give you one example to show you how this happens. Many people are concerned about climate change and what we really need to do to save the environment. Amazingly, there are some Christians in the United States who said that, no, we don't need to be worried about the environment because this is just our temporary home. Our permanent home is in heaven. So this whole idea that we should work hard and save the environment is kind of just indulgence. We're just kind of forgetting about the fact that this is just our temporary home. The world here is our temporary home, okay? Now, there are other Abrahamic religions that said, well, even though we believe that we have another home, all of us believe that there's life after death, but it is also the intention of God that we should live a dignified and meaningful life while we're living here, because He gave us the life to live here, so we need to live a life that is meaningful and glorifying God. So the point I'm just trying to make here is just to make the listener understand that religious views can shape somebody's understanding or commitment to the question of the environment, as I've given an example. And sometimes even within the same religion, depending on the part of that religion that somebody is, you can get different kinds of teaching with regard to how a person should relate to the environment or what they should do about the environment.
Thank you very much. There is a phone call. Do we have a phone call? Okay.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes. Can I take part of the discussion, asking some questions?
Yeah, you are very welcome.
Thank you so much. Doctor, thank you so much to be here today. And the topic today is a good topic. Religion, a tool for the international development. Talking about an evaluation of the role of religion in the development of Nigeria, because you're from Nigeria. Yeah. What's going to be your take about it? This is the first question. And when you take some children raised in a religious family, we understand that they can perform less well academic compared to the non-religion. How does religion affect the development? Another question, if I can go ahead. How did religion affect the development of society? We are today African, and sometimes when you go to another, a church, somebody can tell you, can you come, can you visit my church? Another side, visit my church. And other people can say, when you're going to be in my church, there's a good, you'll be very good. But for me, religion is a religion. There's no difference you can make, out of religion. And this can impact sometimes, our society. This is, all the question I can ask. And the last question is, how does religion help in the development of culture? Thank you.
Okay, before you leave, can you tell us your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Jito Dibali, calling from St. Cloud State.
Okay, good. Professor, you had the questions. Okay. Maybe those questions we can bring into one. Okay. The role of the region in development, I think.
Actually, the questions are many, and sometimes the voice was not clear to me, so I couldn't get. But let me try to my answer. Best.
Yeah.
I can repeat the question if you want. I'm here.
Thank you very much for asking those questions. Let me try to answer the questions as I understand them, and then if there are some that I missed, then you can actually just ask them again, or ask them again.
Sure.
But okay, sure. So the first thing is, how does religion contribute to, say, the development of a society or whatever? Well, the first way to think about that is that in every human society, one of the greatest challenges that the societies would have to address is how to address the fact that human beings have insatiable desires. So what does insatiable desires mean? In other words, we human beings in our crude nature are very greedy. There's no any sense of what is enough. Okay? We just want more and more and more and more. Okay? So religious teaching is supposed to be one of those teachings that is supposed to help us cultivate or sublimate. Sublimate means to understand that even though I don't have everything, but there's a sense of meaning that I have in life that is given to me through my spirituality or through my belief in God or through my religion or something like that, okay? So this is really very important, because if any society is unable to control this greed or this desire for more and more and more without any limit, okay? Without, for instance, creating effective institutions. I remember that when we are creating or designing effective institutions, sometimes people's religious beliefs contribute to the kind of institution that they design and they create. So the problem we have, and I will use Nigeria as an example, the problem in Nigeria, for instance, that we have, which is really very, very important, is that instead of religion helping us to control this selfish human tendency, greed, and insatiable nature of human desires, which if left alone can lead to a state of anomie in society, religion has become actually a means for perpetuating that. In other words, religion has escalated this selfishness. Religion has escalated this crudity of behavior, okay? And let me be very frank with you. Sometimes when I listen to video recordings by either Christian or Muslims in Nigeria, I feel very embarrassed about it. Why? Because if you listen to what's the person talking, it seems like he doesn't recognize that there are other human beings who have dignity in that society, except people who are of his own religious group or members of his own church.
Yeah.
Okay? But when you really look at religion, insofar as we live in this world, there's, I think you made reference to this point, there's no day we're going to wake up where there's going to be only one religion in this world. There's no day, insofar as we live in this kind of world, we're going to wake up and you will say, all the people in this world belong to one religion. There will always be people from different religions, and even within the same religion, do not expect that either in Islam or Christianity or any religion, there's only going to be one tradition. There are going to be different expressions of that religion if you travel around the world. So what we really need to do is to have religion teaching us to understand our shared humanity, okay? Our shared humanity meaning, even though I belong to this religion, somebody belongs to another religion, but we are all human beings and created in the image of God. But a situation where religion becomes the platform when I will treat you as if you are subhuman just because your religion is different from mine, then religion becomes an obstacle to development. So you will see, for instance, today in Nigeria where religion is being used to manipulate people, okay? Some few people are getting rich. And I'm saying this in both Islam and Christianity, believe me, okay? So if the most important problem in every human society is how to control or to sublimate our insatiable desire for more, and more, and religion, instead of helping us to control that, becomes the means that justify or rationalize people becoming so aggressive so that if somebody is belonging to a different religion, I can violate his or her rights, thinking that because they are less than human, they are not a Christian, so I can do this to them and get away with it. No, that's not proper. If religion is doing that, then we are in serious crisis, because where then do we go to try to sublimate or to cultivate this crude human nature that is just really selfish? So to me, in the case of Nigeria, or in many African countries, this is really the case. And even when you look at the history of the United States, the founding of the United States, there's something they call the doctrine of discovery where, for instance, people just say, if you are not a Christian, you don't have a soul. And because Native Americans did not have a soul, it means like they were subhuman. So that gives you license to treat them anyhow just because they are subhuman, okay? So in this case, you see how religion can contribute to somebody not only dominating you, but oppressing you. But there's also a way in which religion can inspire people. We know of some missionaries who have dedicated their lives to work very hard to contribute to the liberation of other people. So religion can be used for development in a positive way, or it can use to bring underdevelopment and domination. And if you check human history throughout, you are going to see that. How religion is used depends on the people who are using it, what is their human interest. Is there human interest to bring justice in this world? Is there human interest to respect the human dignity of all? Or is there human interest to become rich and wealthy, and so they use their religion just to make them more rich at the expense of other people? So it is 50-50, depending on context.
Okay, I think you answered those questions. And myself, I have another question. It's about religions. We do have a lot of religions in Africa. We have, beside Abrahamic religions, we do have traditional religions. Mm-hmm. And my question is to know if even traditional religion can be used in development, for example. Mm-hmm. Can they?
Yes, traditional religion can be used for development. But again, I would argue, based on experience that, or based on contemporary scholarship, that it depends on what you mean by development, because we don't get into that. But what is development? Okay,
it's another question.
Yeah, it's a big question. Okay, But let me give you one example, because as somebody who has studied religion for a very long time, I know, for instance, if you check in African history, there's documented evidence to show that both Islam and Christianity have been used to oppress the traditional African people. If you check the history, this is well documented, okay? Now, of course, religion has evolved. So, but the other thing I would just want to say is that the fact that I said this does not mean that traditional African religion is kind of like free or fair to everybody. I remember in Nigeria, I was having this discussion with somebody. He said in his language, if anybody comes from, because you know religion is always taught in people's particular language, but he said in his language, there's a saying that anybody who is not a member of his ethnic group is referred to as somebody living in the bush. Okay? Somebody living in the bush. So what does that mean? So it means in the traditional religion of these people, if even in their language, which they are going to use for religion, and I'm saying this because if you check the 16th century Oxford Dictionary of English, go and check it for the definition of what black is. If you see the definition of black, you wouldn't be surprised about how some white people really treated black people, because the definition of the word black in the dictionary, Oxford Dictionary of 16th century, was terribly bad. Okay? So if you see somebody black, there is a tendency for that language to really shape the way you perceive that person. So traditional African religion in some cases was communal, but many pre-colonial or traditional African tribal communities were fighting each other, and their sense of the world is just very limited to their group. Remember that Lawrence Kohlberg said that there are 3 stages of moral development. One is the pre-conventional. Pre-conventional means people are not even talking about any moral or ethical principle. They just are doing cost-benefit analysis. What is good for them, that's morality. What is bad for them, it's not morality, okay? So that's just who they are. And then the second level of moral development is where morality is what your group tells you to do. And that group can be your peer group, your family, your ethnic group, or your country,
people.
or your country, your people. So in other words, if I belong to one ethnic group in Africa and I am told that the other ethnic group are less than human or this and that, then I say, so be it, and I treat them like that, okay? So let's be frank about it. I am an African and I feel proud about my identity, but this is a fact. We have to admit that even in pre-colonial Africa, along tribal lines, there are certain tribes and their religion that use their religion to treat other people as if they are less than human. Now, the highest level of moral development is where you are concerned about moral duty. In other words, I cannot say something is good for me, but deny it to another human being because I'm applying the same principle and the same standard across the board. So it does not matter whether that person is from Guatemala, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, or some other place, Brazil, or whatever. The issue is there are certain moral principles that have to be applied, and they should be applied to everybody. So in this case, traditional African religion can be used for good, it can be used for bad. It depends on the intention of the people. If their intention is selfishness, they want to conquer more land, they want a lot of slaves and servants, they will just use their religion to justify that. But if their religion, their human interest is to bring justice to humanity and treat everybody, then they will use their religion. So when people read the Holy Quran, the Holy Bible, if their goal is to dominate other people, they will look for verses in the Holy Quran and the Holy Bible that would help them dominate others, encourage them to dominate others. But if their desire is to treat all human beings with dignity and respect, they will read certain verses or teachings that would help them, inspire them, so that they do that for the whole of humanity.
So, Professor, what can be done to change our behavior about religion in Africa so that religion can be really a tool for development? What can we do? Because it's like we are lacking something. How can we bring up that thing so that we can do also development as other countries?
Okay, I think this is a very big question too. And the reason why I say it is a very big question too, because one of the areas of Western civilization, because I have this great interest in development, and one of the areas of the evolution of Western civilization that has attracted me and I have devoted quite a lot of time to study is the Enlightenment. And the Enlightenment period, for the listener, is this period when Western civilization moved from the Dark Ages into the modern period. If you go back and read the challenges that Western civilization went through, it was difficult. It wasn't easy, okay? Because they were also very religious during the medieval period, okay? So how did they move to this new chapter in Western civilization where things are going to be looked at in a very different way, where science, technology, and reason became very important? Now, there's a huge debate going on about this. It is called the secularization debate, because the moment you start telling people that they should take science very seriously, they should take technology very seriously, they should promote economic growth and things like that, people would think that you are trying to secularize, you are trying to make them move away from God. And it is true. I wouldn't deny to anybody that any country, any religious person that decides that he or she is going to embrace capitalism, okay? The person should be prepared that he's going to compromise or she's going to compromise their religion. Let me repeat again. Anybody. Because if you check the history of the United States of America, there's no religion that came to America, okay, and that was not transformed by capitalism.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So it's just impossible. And why do I say this? Okay, let me give you a quick hint at that. You see, as I mentioned much earlier, we human beings are very crude in our nature because we are very greedy. We want more and more and more. There's no limit to that. But religion is one of those things that is supposed to cultivate us, help us sublimate all this through religious teachings, right? So we are supposed to discipline our desires. For those that are familiar with the Christian tradition, this goes back to Plato. There's something called appetitive desires or desires of the flesh, which just simply means that I see something, I know that doing it is the wrong thing, it will harm other human beings, but it will make me happy, it will make me rich. So I decide to go for my wealth and ignore the suffering that other people are going to go through. So what capitalism did was that capitalism came and said that you don't need anything to change your selfishness. All you need to do is just to channel your selfishness, okay? This selfishness that you have in your crude human nature is an invisible hand that will lead to development in society, if that is the kind of development you're talking about.
Yeah.
So let everybody pursue his or her selfish interests, and doing that will bring creativity, innovation, and efficiency in society, and then there will be economic growth, okay? The problem is that if the people who talk about economic growth at the beginning as the solution to human development will now resurrect, they will be very, very disappointed, okay? We live in the United States, I live in the United States, but we are the richest country in the world. But if I go out of this building now, there are some people who have not gotten lunch and they have not gotten, they don't know where they are going to get their dinner. And they are living in the richest country.
That's true.
Yeah, so the problem, I understand the importance of growth. Growth is very important, but simply because an economy grows, capitalism succeeds, that does not automatically mean that it is going to benefit everybody, okay? So this idea that people should just pursue their selfishness is what capitalism has done to undermine religion. Because religion is saying, no, this selfishness, this selfish human nature need to be sublimated. It need to be transformed. But then capitalism is saying, no, 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 you don't need any transformation. Actually, leave it as the way it is. Just channel it. If you channel it, it is going to lead to greater growth and economic productivity. This is what we've been dealing with for the past how many hundreds of years, and still here we are. We are the richest country in the world, but there's no any guarantee that even if economic growth increases in the United States, simply having economic growth without some institutions that tamper with the way the benefits of growth are distributed in society, that everybody in America or in the world is going to be happy. I'm not talking about socialism. So I don't want the listener to think like, oh, Samuel Zalanga is promoting socialism or communism or something like that. No, okay? We cannot create a society where all of us are equal, and I don't think this is what many people are looking for. But the idea of the human dignity of all is something that we all have to stand for. There's no reason why some people would live in the world of abundance, yet they don't have anything to eat, they're just living like animals. What is the meaning of existence? I don't understand how a civilization, for instance, can trace itself back to the wisdom of Socrates, the wisdom of Plato, Aristotle. Up to this point, we're having all these discussions, and then we live in a world where we have the wealth, we have the material means of production, but yet some people are living in misery.
Thank you, Professor. I think we are going to the end of the show.
Okay.
And thank you very much for bringing all this light into our understanding of religion. Because many people, they think that religion doesn't have anything to do with development. And you brought a lot of light. Maybe next time or another time, we're going to come back and keep again doing this. And before I summarize this in French, there is another call coming in.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
hello?
Yes. Yeah, it's Mr. Gitwa from Saint-Cloud again.
Okay, go ahead.
I know that it is a mistake to separate faith from development. We are living in society today where the head of churches are not, what I can say, did well, but some of them is not like that. Because the question I can ask you is, religion bad or good? I know you can break out some response, but going to all these churches, and we know that we're talking about the development, you can tell how, the attitude of our women today in the church, when they get home, they can change. They can call the pastors dead. They can call the husband their own name. And when somebody like the husband cannot go in the same church like them, it becomes a problem. What can break today more divorce in our society? Because we want really be proud of the women we live with or the men. But the problem can be from where they are going in the church. What's going to be your take about it?
It's a good question, and you're talking now about the church, which means you're talking about a Christianity. And some pastors, I think Professor answered some of those questions because he said religion can be used in a wrong way or it can be used in a good way. And you are talking about divorce. Yes, some people when they teach, I don't know, maybe Professor gonna have a more answer than me.
Professor, but I want to hear from the professor because I know, he was talking about, the development, talking about the religion. And, I think it goes together. It goes together.
Yeah, I mean, Oh, okay. I'm going to pass him the word.
They go together, but as I said, in this discussion, we haven't addressed exactly what development is because development has been defined in different ways by different people. For instance, Professor Dudley Sears, who used to be at the Institute of Development Studies at Sussex University in the United Kingdom, at the end of the 1970s, he came up with this concept of the new meaning of development, where he said, in order to know whether a society is developing or not, there are three questions to ask. What is happening to unemployment? What is happening to inequality? And what is happening to poverty? Okay, these three things. He said, if a society, if any of this situation is worsening, poverty, unemployment, and inequality, if it is worsening in society, even if the economy of that society is growing, we should not consider that society as kind of like developed, okay? So the other thing also is development means kind of like freedom or the capability to function. And then development in the Western world has been characterized with a sense of individualism, okay? And I think when you talk about divorce, it comes very close to this issue of individualism. Because in the culture that I grew up in, the divorce was very, very limited, at least in my church. And when I grew up, maybe my parents could have divorced. They have gone through quite a lot of ups and downs. But because it was not even an option, okay, they were able to survive. They persevered through it. And I ended up growing in a family with two parents. And I think when they look back, in spite of the fact that it must have been really a lot of struggle, but probably they felt very happy about that. But when you talk about development in the modern sense, especially when it includes liberal democracy emphasizes individualism. It's just this idea that every one of us should pursue his or her own utopia, your own imaginary society or something like that. So when people are in a marriage relationship, and if you're talking about especially the African immigrant community, many women that come here from Africa are not used to the amount of freedom that American society really gives them. So when they come here, they just feel, you know, like if you tie, like I grew up in a rural area in Africa, and if you tie a goat for the whole day and then you release it in the evening, it starts jumping all over the place or something like that, okay? So, but this is not just something that applies to women, it applies to also us men, to our children. Sometimes when we're in Africa, we are very respectful of our elders and things like that. But when we come here, because of the freedom or whatever, we tend to have disrespect for elderly people. And in the same way, women may feel like in Africa they are very restricted, but when they come here, they have all this freedom. I am not against the freedom, but freedom without responsibility is dangerous.
Exactly.
If you have freedom without social responsibility, it's going to be dangerous. Yep. And I think sometimes, even in American society, one of the mistakes we're making is that people talk a lot about freedom, but they don't really kind of like balance that with the need for social responsibility. I have the freedom to do quite a lot of things, but if I don't exercise that freedom with social responsibility, it's going to lead to a lot of problems. So sometimes when you see what is happening in the church, you find out that even the teaching of the church, and you know, in a liberal democracy, there's no one truth. Liberal democracy just creates this environment where everybody would have his or her opinion. There would be a marketplace of ideas. The ideas will clash there, and then at the end we see what the result is going to be. This is why somebody can start a church. They can be preaching something that I do not agree with, and some people do not agree with, but we don't have the right to tell the person to shut up. The best we can do is to criticize him or go and start our own church, maybe opposed to what he or she is really doing. So living in this democracy, as one former presidential candidate, John Kerry, he was the U.S. Secretary of State, said, he made a very interesting statement that I would always remember. He said, America gives you the freedom to be stupid. Okay? So there's all this freedom. We know that there's all this freedom. And people can pursue divorce, they can pursue this, whatever. So what is happiness? Is there any one place you go in America where somebody will define to you what happiness really is? You have the freedom to define it. So we have to be cautious about it. I feel sorry for people who have gone through divorce. And I know that there are some marriages that are terrible. There's a lot of abuse or whatever that is going on there. I don't have the time to get into this, because sometimes when you look at it from the point of view of abuse that is taking place in the marriage, you will think divorce is better or something like that. But I would be more interested in understanding how did the abuse even came into the family. And I think when you look at how the abuse came into the family is this whole question of individualism, this idea of selfishness. You're in a marriage situation, but I'm just concerned about myself. Remember, there's this lady, lady who was asked about, anyway, they asked her about her religion, what is her religion? And she just mentioned her name, and that's her religion. Okay, she said, so it's just like me, you ask me, what is your religion? And say, Zalanganism. Okay, anything that is good for Zalanga, then is my religion. So it's really unfortunate, okay? So I want just the listener to understand that religion is a very important institution in society, but just do not assume that religion is automatically always used for good. There are times when religion can promote prejudice. Religion can promote discrimination, just as religion can inspire people to struggle against prejudice and to struggle against discrimination. It all depends on what our intentions are, we as human beings. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. We have to end this show. And before I summarize this in French, I would like you to give your last word. Last word, if you have something, counsel to give people, advice, to give to people about religion and all this, so that I can have the whole thing to summarize.
Okay, I'll make just quickly 2 points. One is that at my age now, I'm increasingly becoming disappointed that probably I'm going to die without seeing Africa develop. And when I say Africa develop, I don't mean they become materialistic or whatever. But as John Rawls said, the least advantaged people in Africa, those that are at the bottom of the society that Frantz Fanon called the wretched of the earth. Okay, I am concerned about how can we improve their human dignity. And as somebody who grew up, my parents were evangelists, I grew up in the church, I want to see how religion, not just Christianity, but all religion can contribute in that. But if what religion is going to do in Africa is to tell me that because I'm a Christian, somebody who is a Muslim or somebody who is not, who doesn't have any religion is like an animal or subhuman or something like that. Or if for a Muslim, he's told that if somebody is not a Muslim, just because they are a Christian or they don't have any religion, they are just like subhuman or whatever. I'm really sorry. Africa is not going to go anywhere. When we talk about the secularization that has taken place in the Western world, go and check the history of the Western civilization and you will find out that there was a time when they were fighting each other so much because of religion. And this is why they decided that it's better to create a state that is relatively neutral from religion. Mm-hmm. And then finally, what I just want to say is that I don't think for me, I can mention for myself that I cannot live without religion because I feel like I have studied religion for quite a very long time and I understand that I don't know to just tell me that I should just figure out my life without any faith or without any religion. That in itself is like a faith, it's a religion. Okay? To wake up and just feel like, here am I, I'm just myself or whatever. No. I don't think that's going to work for me. So even if you are not a Christian, even if you are not a believer of Abrahamic religion, you are not a Buddhist or a Hindu or whatever, you don't have any religion, I just want to tell you that if you have any organized beliefs that order your life in the universe, that becomes your religion.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. And as I said it before, for giving us all this light about the religion and development. So I want to summarize this for our French speakers, les francophones. Et aujourd'hui, j'ai eu l'honneur de recevoir le professeur Samuel Zalanga. Il est professeur à l'université Bethel dans le département de sciences politiques et il enseigne spécialement la sociologie. Et nous avons parlé avec lui concernant la religion. On s'est demandé si la religion est un instrument pour le développement. La réalité est que la religion joue un rôle très important dans le développement. Et vous pouvez vous poser la question, pourquoi la religion joue un rôle ou doit jouer un rôle? Et le professeur a donné 5 points très très importants. Il a dit que la religion nous permet, premièrement, d'être en contact avec la divinité. Cela, c'est une relation verticale avec Dieu. Même si vous ne l'appelez pas Dieu, c'est quand même une divinité. Et deuxièmement, la religion forme notre relation personnelle en disant, avec la religion, nous arrivons à comprendre notre propre personne. Et en même temps, comme troisième point, la religion nous permet aussi de comprendre l'autre. Et ça forme même, ça détermine même les relations interpersonnelles. Donc la religion est très importante. Non pas seulement relation interpersonnelle, même une relation coopérative. Et aussi, enfin, qui est le point 5 qu'il a donné, la religion nous permet de comprendre notre environnement. Donc, la religion est au centre de toute culture. La religion est là. Mais ce qui fait que les religions en Afrique, que ce soit le christianisme, l'islam, les religions traditionnelles, ne promotent pas le développement, c'est parce que ces religions n'arrivent pas à répondre aux besoins qui sont insatiables, nos besoins qui sont insatiables, nos désirs qui sont insatiables. Nos religions n'arrivent pas à répondre à cela. Donc, il faut faire un changement. La religion devrait nous amener à répondre à ces besoins et à répondre aussi à des questions qui sont très grandes, des grandes questions qui peuvent, des questions qui vont transformer, je voulais dire, la société. Et à la fin de tout, le professeur vient de nous dire que il est déçu parce que l'âge est en train d'avancer et il ne voit pas ce que c'est Frantz Fanon qui a appelé les damnés de la terre se développer en Afrique. Lui, il voudrait mourir et voir ces gens se développer. Mais malheureusement, l'âge avance et il ne sait pas s'il va voir le développement de ces gens-là. Et ça le déçoit un tout petit peu. Et il dit, en fait, lui, il ne peut pas vivre sans religion, parce que la religion est le centre de tout. La religion est le centre de tout. Voilà un peu en gros ce que nous avons discuté dans cette émission. Donc, la religion est au centre de tout. Pour ceux-là qui pensaient que la religion n'a rien à faire avec le développement, ils se détrompent. Parce qu'en même temps, il faut aussi se demander qu'est-ce que le développement. Il y a plusieurs définitions et il faut y travailler. Donc, voilà, c'est avec ces notes que nous arrivons à la fin de cette émission et nous disons grand merci pour avoir participé et assisté à cette émission. Merci aussi à notre frère qui a posé des questions à partir de Saint-Cloud. Nous disons merci. Peut-être nous allons encore revenir avec une émission pareille prochainement pour donner un peu plus de lumière et sur le rôle de la religion. Merci beaucoup et à bientôt. Bye bye.
Du nouveau à Minneapolis, Tempo Afrique Travel. Vous voulez voyager? Achetez vos billets d'avion à l'agent de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel. Avec l'agent de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, pas de problème de connexion, pas de problème de transfert de vol. Avec l'agent de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, c'est le voyage en toute tranquillité, en toute beauté, de votre maison jusqu'à votre destination. Votre satisfaction est notre plaisir.